Happy 4th of July, bricks and mortar retailers. Welcome to this week's training. And it's all about money management and increasing your profitability. So, take two on this because I had some internet problems. Man, the internet here in Germany is no fun at all. Right, so we're talking about money management. I'd love to know, pop that in the comments section below. Do you have a money management system? Yes or no? It's one of those interesting topics because the connection between managing money and increasing our profitability can be a little bit fuzzy. You know, when I explain this concept to my clients for the first time, it's not something that's overly apparent. In fact, it wasn't overly apparent to me until I learned about it, until my business coach at the time when I was running my pharmacies ran through the concept with me. And as you know, it's one of the pillars of profitability in what I teach. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and it's called the money management system. As always, there is a worksheet associated with this. If you want a copy of the worksheet, just make sure you put the word worksheet below. And and before we move ahead, please, I would really appreciate it if you could just do a quick like to this video. It just helps the algorithm and show the training to more people who could benefit from it. And it just really helps me out a lot. So let's run through it. So one of the when it comes to this topic, the major mistake or the big problem that I see retailers having and mistakes making is the fact that they're mixing business and personal funds together. So combining all the funds into one bank account makes it really challenging to optimize the business's financial performance, not only from the fact that you're spending money that you shouldn't be spending, but also the fact that if you're mixing the two funds together, you're not optimizing for profitability. Because as I've spoken about at length, the value of your business is directly correlated to the profitability of your store. So you want to make sure that you have a highly profitable business so that when it comes to selling, you're going to achieve a greater multiple. Now, certainly you may not be thinking about selling for quite a long time, and that's okay. But the whole process of optimizing your business for profit leads to so many other benefits that you will experience within running your store. The other big mistake is, following on from that, is that we have one bank account for all transactions. A really, really big mistake. And I'm going to run through why that is the case. But this is adapted from what personal finance gurus keep telling us is to, talk about separating your funds. I think Ramit Sethi really popularized this really, really well in the beginning, where he encouraged all of us for when our salary came into our account to put it up into to transfer it to different sub accounts. And that's a principle that we should be applying to our businesses. The other really big mistake I see as a consequence of this is failing to plan for taxes, right? And you're probably thinking, how is this related to profitability, Alvin? Well, I'm going to tell you in a moment. But it's the big mistake here is, like, when it comes to tax time, we have no fucking money, right? We're constantly chasing our tail. We're calling up our accountant, asking them to sort out some sort of payment plan. You really don't want that headache when it comes to tax time, right? You want to make sure that you've got a system in place, and I'm going to run through that. Ultimately, the big mistake in money management ultimately leads to the fact that you're just overspending your money. This happens in personal finance. This definitely happens in our business. The fact that we've got a lump sum of cash in our trading account, we automatically think we can do things with that money that we probably shouldn't be doing, right? So this is really, really important. And so the consequences of making this mistake, just making sure that we can see here. I've still got some internet issues, but let's keep going. So the consequences of making this mistake is basically we're using our funds inefficiently, and we've got money all in one spot, and we're basically not optimizing the business for cash. There's a risk that we're overspending when we've got funds in the bank account. Also, the consequences at the same time, when it comes to tax time, we've got no money in the bank. And ultimately we're just running an overly fat business that is not optimized for profitability. So if we get this right, and I'm just jumping back here. Yeah, that's better. If we get this right, so we are going to have much bigger profits, right? Our store is going to be optimized for profitability. We are going to have optimized allocation of our resources. So with the funds in the right places, we can deploy our funds correctly. The store is going to be far more financially stable because we've got a structured management approach that we can use to grow our business and build financial stability, and ensuring that we've got the funds to deploy when we need to, right? And not only that, we are going to be ready for the tax man when it comes to tax time. We're not going to be scrambling because we've already got the money sorted out for that, which I'll run through in a moment. And that leads to greater financial security for us as the bricks and mortar retail business owner. And it's going to lead to much leaner business operations. And we are going to prevent ourselves from spending money unnecessarily. We're going to have a far leaner business. And I'll run through all of that in just a moment. So here is what you need to do. And so remember, if you want a copy of the worksheet, just pop the word worksheet below. I will get it out to you or the team. So let's talk about, on a very high level, as always, how I suggest that you implement some sort of money management system within your store. Now, some of these are probably alluded to based on the mistakes that we're making. And here is the basic overall high concepts. If you want some help with this stuff to implement within your store, please make sure you reach out to me or the team, and we can start to help you with this and implement this in your store, and therefore drive profitability, get rid of the headaches so that you can spend more time and freedom doing what you love. So step number one is you need to set up buckets. So this is the same thing like Ramit Sethi mentioned. Also, a lot of personal finance people recommend you set up different buckets, and the different buckets are different bank accounts. So you need to set up different bank accounts for perhaps your taxes, right? So you want to make sure that you keep that money separate. As soon as the money comes in to the account, you want to have a separate bank account for taxes. You would want to consider having a separate bank account for your expenses. So suffice to say is that you need to come up with some sort of system to have extra bank accounts. And it's really important because the whole idea of having these separate bank accounts is once the money comes in, your banking or your FPOS at the end of the week, I recommend you do a sweep, transfer things out. So then you really know how much money you've got to play with, right? Left in your bank account, how much money you've got left to deploy to do some of the other things that you want to achieve within your store, because now you've got the peace of mind that you've already allocated for some of your expenses. Now, how do you go about allocating what to put in these buckets? Well, it's a bit of a process that you need it's always helpful to work through it with somebody, but you need to have a look at your P&L statements. You need to have a look at the flow, your cash flow in the business, and then work backwards and try and figure out how much you need to set aside on average. So that's really, really important that you need to do that. So the other bucket that I highly recommend you set up is that you start to pay yourself first. So this is a little bit of a tricky concept, and again, borrowed from the personal finance people. So the whole idea is you're in business, and many of us owners don't actually pay ourselves a sufficient amount. And so what that does is that leads you to run your business like thinking like, I'm not going to get paid. And then you sort of overextend or you over allocate funds to other parts of the business where you shouldn't be. Right. So you want to make sure that by paying yourself first a fair wage or whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you need to get paid for yourself. And this is different from a drawing, right? So this is like a wage. So drawings I'll handle separately, but you need to keep that money aside for you. So when the money comes into your bank account, you need to put a certain amount aside for yourself, and you need to get into that habit of doing that. So, and you need to determine what that's going to be, right? So, if you look at your store and you need to look at your store, you need to look at the profitability, you need to look at, a manager running that store, what would you pay that person, and therefore how you would pay yourself. The next step is you need to systematize the whole process. So, coming up with some sort of system is essential for this to work. So, there are so many ways that you can systematize this. You can do this all electronically. There are many banks, depending where in the world you are, that can do this. They can as the funds come in, it can automatically split it into your different sub accounts. What I recommend is to keep it easy, where you, the business owner, at the end of the week, so perhaps a Sunday or the beginning of the next week, Monday, you know how much money has come in, and then you start to allocate it out into the different buckets. So the system here is to have it in your diary that this is what you're going to do on Monday morning at 11 o'clock or Sunday night at 10 p.m. or whatever it is that's going to work for you. But you need to have a system that you need to commit to for this to work effectively. And ultimately, you need to stick to it, because like anything, if you start this process of transferring money and managing your money, and then you give it up, and then you try and start it up again, it's just not going to work. You need to be consistent. You need to stick to the system. Otherwise, it's just all going to fall apart. Just like any system, right? You want to create something. When you do create a system, it's really important for you, when you get momentum or to achieve momentum, that you ultimately stick to it. So that's that's really, really important. And you need to start to track and measure. So tracking and measuring, like everything that we do within our stores, is really, really important. So when I say track and measure, so for many of us, it's going to be quite challenging to immediately set aside those funds into those separate buckets from the beginning. You need to be strategic. You need to work out what the ultimate figure is, percentage wise, that you're going to transfer into your buckets. But you need to make sure that you work up to it slowly. And you need to make sure that you track and measure, so that initially, for the first perhaps 3 to 6 months, you're not overly straining your bank account. You're not overly straining your business by making these transfers out to your buckets as part of this money management system. And that's really, really important. This is where most people who try and implement it by themselves fall apart. You try and do too much in terms of setting this system up, and you're not tracking and measuring, and then all of a sudden you've got no money in the bank account, and then it just shit hits the fan, and then you're fucked. So you want to make sure that you track and measure and implement this very, very slowly. Excuse me. So in summary, we need to start planning for these things, right? You need to start planning your buckets, your sub bank accounts. You need to start figuring out how much you need to start transferring into there, how often you're going to be doing it. Like I said, on a weekly basis. For many of us retailers, that works well. What's the figure, the percentage amount? There's quite a lot of planning that you need to do. For some people, it can be challenging to set up sub bank accounts with our banking providers that we work with. But hopefully in 2024, your bank makes it very easy for you to set up these sub bank accounts, and with a nominal charge, if not free. So there's quite a bit of planning that you need to do, figuring out what bucket you're going to have, then setting up these sub bank accounts. And then from there, working out how much you're going to be transferring into there. And like I mentioned, you need to make sure that you work up slowly. Otherwise, you're really going to stress your business out. So you need to start planning, right? And this is where, if you need some help with this stuff, please make sure you reach out to me or the team, and we can make sure that we set you up on a plan properly on how to do this. So you need to start planning this. I really must reiterate the fact that you must start to pay yourself first. This is one of the key aspects in this money management system that you need to implement. And once you start paying yourself first, then you can start to see the rewards in that bank account, and then later on down the track. So this is different to your drawings that you would normally take out. But yeah, so please don't overlook that concept of paying yourself first. And the last thing is you need to really start to take action, because analysis paralysis, like everything that we do, can make it very, very challenging for us to move forward. And yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to a money management system, whichever money management system that you use. I think the really important thing is to break it down into the steps, like I've given you here, for example, or any other steps that you may come across, and then start to take action. All right, that's the let's land this ship now, because my internet is shit and I don't want to risk it. So there you go. That's my money management system. If you want a copy of the worksheet, just please make sure that you pop the word worksheet below. And if you've made it to the end, make sure you give this video a like. And until next time, catch you later.